Thank you. The presentation today is in PDF. I had a couple of animations, which means you will see a whole slide and no bullet point coming up, so I would ask you not to read ahead, but stick with me. I'm going to start with some basic things, and I assume that they are kind of trivial for many people in the audience, but maybe not for everybody. But I hear so many weird things, even at academic conferences, people dealing with Bitcoin for 5 or 10 years and they still get some things wrong. Maybe I get it wrong, I don't know. So I would appreciate feedback, and for those of you for whom it's too easy in the end, I have 4 questions, 3 of which I think are really hard. One might be impossible to answer, but if you have any ideas on how we could tackle those questions, please let me know. I'm going to start with a couple of basic things. So it's the narrative around Bitcoin. Why is it important for me? I have been interested in Bitcoin for 10 years, and I have a research project running, and Nasib is also working on the project. And we still face the narrative that has been established in the very beginning. There are 2 stories from the Bitcoin haters. First of all, Bitcoin is only for criminal purposes, and so it's for money laundering, terrorism financing, and if you have been here yesterday, and if you know Bitcoin, it's most likely not the best tool for money laundering and terrorism financing because it's not anonymous, it's pseudonymous. And yesterday we had a lot of good presentations from forensic guys. And the second narrative is, of course, the high energy consumption. And those narratives have been around for a while, and I can see the general audience, not in this room, presumably, but in the general population, it's still the case. Bitcoin equals blockchain equals energy waste. And it takes a lot of time to get that out of their heads. And maybe you've heard about the case where the Worldwide Fund for Nature wanted to create some tokens for fundraising. It was in 2022, they did it on Polygon, and they had so much negative backlash about the energy consumption that they had to immediately remove it. Honestly, in those days, it wasn't Polygon, second layer of Ethereum, and Ethereum was still on proof of work, but a couple of months later, Ethereum switched to proof of stake, and energy was not that much of an issue anymore. But still, the narrative is still in people's heads. And there are many, many weird statements, and this is one that was made in 2017 by somebody from the World Economic Forum. And even in those days, I was giving presentations and I told the people it's not going to happen that in 2020 Bitcoin will consume more energy than the whole world produces, because you cannot extrapolate an exponential function. It simply doesn't work, and I was right, because it's 2025. But there are other things, and it's kind of weird. I see this in academic presentations also. We are getting more and more efficient hardware. I saw this in a discussion of the Bitcoin Mining Council. So efficiency of hardware is ingrained in people's brains. Oh, hardware is getting more efficient. Does this mean, or this means we need less energy in the future? Actually not, because the competition is not about the hash rate. It's not even about energy use. It's about how much money do you need to put in to get some equipment, and how much money do you need to get out. Currently you get about 3.2 Bitcoin for one block of mining, which is about a little bit more than 300,000 euro. That means you're going to invest that much money so you can make a profit, and if the hardware is getting more efficient, it's simply the case the hash rate is going up, but it doesn't mean that the energy use is going down. Oh yeah, by the way, this is called Jevons Paradox. For those who want a little bit of background, it means if you increase some kind of efficiency, it could also mean that you need more of the resources, because people are using it more and more. That's what's happening in Bitcoin mining, and what has happened ever since the first miners started with CPUs, then GPUs, then FPGAs, and now we have ASICs. So, if you have to look at the hash rate, and this is the hash rate in the last year or so, it has been constantly going up, and the prices are also going up. So there's always a strong correlation between how much can you get out of mining Bitcoin and how much are you willing to invest. But it's not a perfect correlation, because if technology improves, then hash rate grows faster. It's more about how much do you need to put in. And I think the narrative is changing, but maybe for the wrong reasons. I would say the narrative is changing because now the ordinary guy on the street can make money out of Bitcoin because you have Bitcoin ETFs. It's easier to invest in Bitcoin, which means if you're likely to make some money out of something, then you look away when it comes to energy or environmental issues. So that could be one reason. At least I have the feeling the narrative changed quite a bit because I'm watching the news and energy consumption is not so much of a topic anymore, on average. But still, a couple of things I wanted to challenge. First of all, we always have the assumption that Bitcoin consumes a lot of energy. Energy cannot be consumed, it can only be used because it dissipates in heat, which we can reuse, as we've seen in the previous presentation. It uses a lot of energy, it needs a lot of energy, it requires a lot of energy and so on. But the thing is, what for do we need the energy? And this is one thing most people don't get out on the street. Again, maybe the wrong audience here, but I just wanted to make this clear also for the discussion that we're going to have to attend later on. What is Bitcoin? Is it a network of nodes that sustains it and that enforces the rules? I'm part of this network. I have a Bitcoin client running on my machine in the background, and I assume it doesn't consume much energy, it doesn't slow my computer really down, it downloads Bitcoin packages from the internet, and this is only little energy use. Actually, that's an estimate of ChatGPT, I'm not sure if it's fully correct, but it's a minor fraction of the total energy use, maintaining the network. All those nodes that make sure that the clocks are correct and that you can add to the chain. The energy is being used for the creation of blocks, for the miners, because they have this rat race and they want to be the first to create a block because then you can get a reward. And that's a huge energy use. So, first of all, I would say, storyline, Bitcoin uses a lot of energy, Bitcoin consumes energy. That's an anthropomorphism. We just assume Bitcoin is some kind of entity, and it's Bitcoin that plugs in it, like, I need energy. But it's a little bit like saying, oh, I have a private jet. I'm not polluting the environment. It's a jet that uses the energy. It's my SUV, it's everything I'm doing, but it's not me. So I just wanted to point it out that Bitcoin itself might not use that much energy in the first place. And then I was looking for examples, the good ones and the bad ones. And we had some examples in the presentation from ideas, and those are the interesting ones. Those are the ones I want to hear. Those cases in which Bitcoin can really do something good objectively. And we've heard before it can stabilize the network, but I also found other cases. Here we have one where you can use Bitcoin mining to flare, to prevent the flaring of methane, which is much more destructive to the atmosphere than CO2. So I'm not an energy engineer, so I thought, why can Bitcoin be helpful? I mean, if you burn methane, you get heat, or you get those flames, and if you just use it for something else, then you also burn it. And the answer is obvious. If you use some kind of combustion engine, then you have less emissions. In other words, if you use Bitcoin mining instead of flaring, you're really doing something good for the environment. Full stop. And of course, we also have the negative cases. If you use fossil fuels and you have an energy network breakdown, that's not good. So we have this kind of fascinating situation that the same thing can really be beneficial for the environment and it can be negative. And the one thing I don't know, I'm a numbers guy. I don't really know the absolute figures. How much of the energy is being really used for the good stuff and how much energy is really doing some damage. And in the discussion, in the panel discussion, we have Alexander Neumüller from the Cambridge Center for Alternative Finance here, who recently published a report, and I guess he will also have some numbers for us, but we will never get the full picture, because even in surveys, we cannot reach out to everybody. But that's the fun, that's the interesting thing, we have both options. Bitcoin can really be beneficial for the environment, and how can we make sure that people are using option 2? So, if we attack Bitcoin, because we always look at it, it's God-given, Bitcoin needs energy, there's not much we can do about it, but let's think about it for a second. Why do we need this energy? It's for network security. And my question is, do we need so much security? And that's a tricky question. And I don't think there's an easy answer, but it might make sense to think about it for a second. What can you gain by attacking Bitcoin? If you use that much energy to attack it, or you can do some double spending, which is pretty good, but on the other hand, you need a lot of energy, so most likely not feasible. You can censor some transactions, but you have to keep up the hash power. You can control who gets the block reward, pretty nice. You can damage Bitcoin's reputation. If something like that happens, that would be a huge blow for the network. And finally, eternal fame within the community because you're the one who has destroyed Bitcoin. So, yeah. But what cannot be gained? You cannot create new Bitcoin. You cannot change the protocol. You cannot steal Bitcoin. And I would assume many people out there think that you can successfully attack the network. You can steal Bitcoin, but it's more like a safecracker opens the safe and there's not much in it. You cannot change the protocol rules and you cannot even go back far in history. You cannot even stop Bitcoin permanently. So those would be the incentives for attacking Bitcoin. Is it worth it? That's a big question. So here are the open questions. And the first one is fairly easy. I guess the other ones are really hard. What would be the implications of a change in Bitcoin's consensus mechanism? Because it's possible. You've seen it with Ethereum. It's possible to go from proof of stake or proof of work to proof of stake. But you're getting something different. And that's also an issue many people outside don't get. You know, you can't compare apples and oranges. I think Ethereum is now fundamentally different than it was before. Same with Bitcoin. You could do it. You could change the consensus algorithm. But it's a different thing then. So that's the easier one. The second one is the one that would be my challenge for you. If anyone could give me an answer for that, I think it's impossible because you cannot quantify something like I've attacked Bitcoin, so I'm now super famous. That's qualitative. But if anyone could give me an answer to that, how much energy do we need for Bitcoin security in diverse scenarios? Of course, it depends on how much Bitcoin is worth. That's the fun part, because if Bitcoin is worth much more, then you need more security, but if it goes down, then why do you need that much security for something that's not worth a lot? So, how much energy do we need? I think it's oversecured, honestly. I think, given the incentives that we have right now, we wouldn't need that much security. Yeah, the third question is the one that I mentioned before. I would be interested in numbers. How much of the energy mining is done in a sustainable manner, how much even benefits the environment, and how much is really harmful and doing wreaking havoc. And finally, that's more some kind of action research, that's for the politicians or the lawyers. Is it possible to control or steer energy consumption without risking overregulation? I like Bitcoin, I'm not a huge fan of overregulation, but I'm also fine with having some kind of regulation in some cases. For example, if you take the kind of example of gold mining, because people say, oh, gold mining is pretty accepted, right? It was a huge issue, and I guess it still is, with using mercury for gold mining. It's damaging the environment. People say, oh, we need gold for the industry. That's nonsense. We need about 8 or 9% of the gold that's being mined for the industry. The rest is for jewelry. And we're damaging the environment. But it's not that much of a news story. But in the case of Bitcoin, can we do something? Like in the example we've seen before, can we steer energy consumption? Can we create mining pools like in Texas that agree to shut down the operations? Like Matthias has shown a couple of examples. How can we motivate the miners to stabilize the grid? Maybe to do something good for a country like Bhutan. So that would be the work package for us, and I think there's so much potential in the space because there's something good that can be done. That's really exciting. And if you have any answers or comments to any of those questions, then please reach out to me, and I'm looking forward to the discussion we're going to have right now. Thank you. Oh, yeah, if there are any questions right now, some tomatoes on the door.
Can I?
Yeah, sure.
There was one wasteful with the fire.
Mm-hmm.
What is that called?
Yeah, the fire is actually the positive
This
form.
one. Am I wrong? Because I'm a crypto mentor and I've been teaching my students that Germany doesn't waste that energy. Usually, actually in Germany, mining is illegal, but if you are a company who has a license, you can apply and then you can use that energy to mine Bitcoin. Is this true?
You mean flaring is forbidden in Germany?
I've been teaching them this. Maybe I've been wrong.
Actually, I don't know, but this for me is
Because as
one
far as
planet.
I
And
know,
for me,
Germany, mining is illegal as a human, but if you apply as a company, it's not
Oh, you
illegal.
mean
You
Bitcoin
can use
mining?
that energy.
you mean flaring, burning?
Uh-huh. Because you have to apply, like it's very complicated process. But if your company gets accepted, then you can use that energy to mine Bitcoin. Even though in German statement it's illegal to mine Bitcoin in your home, like
Oh,
Do you know anything about this?
I don't think it's illegal. Matthias, you're shaking your head.
Is that illegal?
I think
I thought it was since 2020 energy crisis. Yeah, this is what I've been teaching now, so I was right.
Yeah.
I was like, you cannot just mine without a license. Yeah.
And to the best of my knowledge, like you mentioned, Bitcoin mining in China is illegal, but they're still doing it a lot because you've shown us the numbers. It happens in the underground. And I'm not sure about flaring, but for me it's all one planet, and it doesn't really matter if flaring is forbidden in some countries. If there are other countries in which it's allowed, it all goes up in the atmosphere and we are sharing the same ecosystem.
But why is that not used in other European countries?
You mean flaring?
Yeah.
I don't
that
know.
energy that goes to waste, because I'm not also a technician in energy, but even in Kosovo, the sun energy needs to go offshore. As far as I know, that energy can be used for Bitcoin mining. At the moment, the problem is not with people. People trust Bitcoin, and people don't care, honestly, that much. 90% of people that we want to onboard. This kind of discussions still are, we need to change the mindset of the governments, because the people, they trust the system, they trust the ecosystem. This 90% of people that we're waiting to onboard them, they're just waiting for regulators, that they don't even, these discussions need to be more done in a governmental level, because the people already believe the...
Yeah, we need to educate and we need to put it on a high level.
Yes.
And it has to be on a global scale. I was just using this example because it's really a case in which Bitcoin mining can really do something good, because the engines that you're using for using the energy are having less exhaust fumes than flaring has. I'm not sure in which countries flaring is allowed or not, but for me it's a global issue. Yeah. And those cases exist, but I'm looking forward to the discussion now, and Alexander has some exact numbers. How often that happens? How big is it? Is it just 0.05% of the total Bitcoin energy that is being produced, or is it something much higher than that? How often does something like that happen? And we need to have that numbers, and those are really hard to get, but we have an opportunity here to do something good with the same outcome, gaining energy for Bitcoin. But how can we do this? I guess we have to force people a little bit, we have to push them. But it's a tricky thing,
This we discuss in higher level, honestly. The normal people, they are okay.
Yeah, I wrote a paper about it. It's very long that there are some industries which are not that much on the deck. For example, Hollywood, the movie industry, uses a lot of energy, but it's not that much in mass media. So have you ever thought about, am I going to watch a movie because they consumed a lot of energy for producing it? I honestly haven't, but that's something that's commonly said about the planes, I've mentioned it, but there are many other things.
Also, the articles means a lot. I tried to do one research how actually it's better to mine Bitcoin, specifically in Germany. It was so cold. I was there one winter. I was like, why these hotels are not using Bitcoin mining to heat the hotel? And then I couldn't find even any article online how the energy can be reproduced. The mindset needs to be changed, but it can only be changed if...
Exactly. You cannot consume energy, you can just convert it into heat, and if you can use the heat for something useful, like greenhouse heating or like, say, heating a hotel, you also need to take this into consideration. So it's getting really complicated, and of course it all depends on the fact whether you believe that Bitcoin is something useful. If you say it's a substitute for the financial industry, then you need to take into account how much energy does the financial industry need. If you say it's completely useless, it's only for terrorists, then if that's the starting point, then it's... Yeah, not everyone. But I hope we're getting there somewhere.
And who would touch